Story: the world's most notorious manhunt in recent history is over as Washington confirms it has eliminated its #1 terrorist, Osama bin Laden. The al-Qaeda leader was killed following a raid on his hideout in Pakistan. For more on this, we go live to RT's Anissa Nawe. Hello, Anissa. So the U.S. has landed its #1 terrorist target. What's next? Is it game over?
Well, celebrations just exploded across the U.S. as news came of Osama bin Laden's death. It was hard to miss. President Obama himself made the announcement on live television with the words "Justice has been done," and hundreds of Americans made their way to the White House to celebrate what is being hailed as a major victory. This, of course, comes just months before the 10th anniversary of the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Well, DNA testing reportedly confirmed that it was, in fact, Osama bin Laden, although his body was dispersed into the sea. That's going to give rein to conspiracy theorists who are going to claim that they want to see some kind of proof. There's no pictures, no video, and now no body. So we will be expecting to hear all kinds of criticism about that. Nevertheless, the U.S. operation, according to officials, killed Osama bin Laden and 3 other men, including a woman and the son of the al-Qaeda chief. But also U.S. embassies are now warning of anti-American aggression across the globe and making note of a high risk to attacks on any place that Americans gather after the death of bin Laden. And as RT's Lucy Kofanoff reports now from Washington, the death of Osama bin Laden reminds us that it was in fact the U.S. that nourished groups that turned into al-Qaeda and the Taliban back in the 1980s.
The roots of conflict so often go back to foreign policy decisions made years and years ago. And, while the president did say in his speech tonight that the American people did not choose this fight came to the United States in U.S. soil, referencing, of course, the 9/11 attacks. We have to remember that the United States policy of covertly arming the Mujahideen in Afghanistan back in the 80s had, of course, contributed so much to the current situation that we have on the ground today. And it's one of those things that, unfortunately, in Washington sort of gets really lost in the mix. We don't really see the consequences of certain foreign policy actions as they relate to the present news developments on the ground.
Now, Moscow hailed the news of Osama bin Laden's demise as a major milestone against global terror. It also voiced hope that it would lead to further cooperation. Of course, Russia is no stranger to terror attacks. In fact, it's home to the 2 most recent global terror attacks, one of them being the bombing of the Moscow metro last year, and, of course, most recently, the attack on Moscow's international airport, which targeted not just Russians, but many internationals became victims of that terror attack. RT's Medina Koshnova is in the North Caucasus and reports on how Russian security forces there are constantly on the offensive against domestic terror.
This Greater Caucasian Mountains also provide quite a convenient zone for many militants with links to Al-Qaeda to hide and develop their networks, and really only joint efforts from both national and international sides can really improve the situation. Now, after the killing of bin Laden, all eyes are searching for Russia's most wanted man, Doku Umarov. He claimed responsibility for a number of high-profile terror attacks in Russia in the last several years. And the latest Moscow Domodedovo airport attack that happened this year, and twin suicide Moscow metro bombings that happened last year. Now, in the last several weeks, some intensified anti-terror raids have been launched here in the North Caucasus, and dozens of militants with links to Al-Qaeda have been wiped out. But still, the problem of terrorism that exists in this region in Russia's North Caucasus has long ago spread far beyond and is a part of an international terrorist network.
Now, the death of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan doesn't mean that the global war on terror is over. In fact, many agree it's too early to celebrate this symbolic milestone. RT's Priya Sridhar is in the region and explains why terrorist groups can quickly adapt to losses within their ranks.
it's important to remember that when you think about this global war on terror, it's not something that just affects the United States or the West. Obviously, around the world, there are terrorist attacks that have happened in recent years, since 2001, September 11th, that have had nothing to do with al-Qaeda. So while the death of Osama bin Laden can be seen as somewhat of a success, saying that the war on terror is over is definitely a little bit oversimplified. It's also important to remember the context here, the history of this region. If you look back to the 1980s, it was actually the United States, along with the help of the ISI, or Pakistan Secret Service, that were supposedly training freedom fighters during the Soviet-Afghan War. It was then those same freedom fighters that ended up turning into terrorists and carrying out a lot of these attacks that ended up really majorly affecting the lives of the Pakistani civilians. That, along with American drone attacks that have killed several Pakistani civilians. It's hard to say that Pakistan also hasn't been affected by this war on terror. They certainly have been a victim as well. When it comes to India's reaction to Osama bin Laden's death, a lot of Indians are still waiting for Pakistan's government's official reaction as to whether or not they knew that these American troops were going to come in and capture Osama bin Laden. There's a lot of talk, a lot of speculation here, a lot of eyebrows raised, talking about the fact that Osama bin Laden was captured so close to the Pakistani capital. A lot of Indians here are wondering how they could not have known that he was there.
Well, Priya said it very well. Terrorism, of course, is a global threat, and despite the fact that Osama bin Laden's death is a huge, significant milestone in the fight against terror, the actual risk of it is very real.
All right, Artiza Nisa, now live for us in Moscow. Thanks for that report.